So while many of us were out on our winter holiday relaxing, Twitter unveiled new rules that they claim were designed to fight abuse and protect the freedom of expression. Today, Sarah Zhang, contributing editor at Motherboard, took a long look at the history of Twitter's community rules and how they've evolved over time. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Hi.
So how did the original rules, how did they most vary from what they look like today?
Well, the original rules were much shorter, less than half the length they are today. They also have very little to say about speech. The original rules did prohibit, for example, posting people's addresses, infringing copyright. They also prohibited direct and specific threats to other users, but they were otherwise quite limited.
So what do you think is the most important thing that's changed?
The new rules now prohibit what Twitter calls hateful conduct. They say it's not the same thing as hate speech, but it's, that you can't make threats or promote violence against a person or group on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, gender. I mean, it is basically hate speech. So that's the absolute biggest change that they've made. The rules started out very limited. They took a lot of cues from sort of American traditions of free speech, and a prohibition against hate speech is more of a European thing. So they are definitely leaning more towards a prohibitive model now.
So a lot of times we talk about just the social networks like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, but Facebook and Instagram have very serious different policies. Like how would you describe the different policies at Facebook and Instagram and how they get away with that versus Twitter?
I mean, I would describe Facebook and Instagram as unapologetically censorious. Facebook institutes a real names policy, which means they're basically asking people for government ID to be able to engage on their social media platform. Like that's a really big deal. Instagram and Facebook do this thing where you can't show nipples, and that's really bizarre. Also, it's definitely a very American thing. Europeans don't really understand this. It's also really random, right? Because it's like female nipples aren't allowed on these social networks, but male nipples are totally okay. And they're really just unapologetic about it. They don't really see this as a problem in any way.
That kind of gets at the core of the challenge of putting any sort of line in the sand in this regard, is that the world is covered with many different societies that live by many different rules, and making any one service that is a worldwide service, that services the entire world, yet follows a certain rule group, is always going to either intrude or not intrude enough within the rules of those particular areas. I mean, is this even something that Twitter could ever expect to actually get a hold of, to say limit hate speech or limit talking about terrorism using their service? Like, there's so much nuance there. How do they do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're right in that it's very difficult. A lot of the changes that you see in these policies over time, I think especially at Twitter, you can sort of chart it out to the social media companies' expansions out overseas where values are very different. And to be clear, a lot of the social media platforms do have different policies in different jurisdictions. So, for example, I believe Facebook has hashed out an agreement with Germany over certain kinds of speech. In France, there's actually a law that gives people the right to post certain kinds of content. So there's, I think, a lawsuit against Facebook going on right now where a woman's post was taken down, and it was like a post of art, and there was a nipple in it. And so she's, I believe, suing Facebook right now. So the policies on these platforms do differ from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Sometimes they come under fire for making those differentiations. For example, Twitter came under fire for enforcing this anti-blasphemy rule in Pakistan for a bit, and then they backpedaled on that. But that said, like they change because they are expanding out to these different places with different values, and it's really interesting to sort of watch the clash between what are frankly obviously American values and the rest of the world.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I know that Twitter gets criticized all the time for being an easy place to use Twitter to abuse people, women, and minorities, and so do you think that just as a result of all that criticism, they're becoming more censorious, like Facebook and Instagram?
I do think so. I think that they are trying very hard not to be. I think that internally the company identity is still, they want to believe that they are for free speech. And a lot of, I think they like genuinely believe this. But it's hard, right? Like they are imposing more restrictions and they're doing it, they've been trying to be thoughtful about it. And I do think a lot of it is in reaction to growing awareness of online harassment, particularly the online harassment of women.
So what do you make of the story that broke today about the Florida woman who is suing Twitter? Her husband was killed by a terrorist in Jordan, and she says he wouldn't have been killed if Twitter hadn't given ISIS a platform. And that's a whole other issue that Twitter is dealing with right now. So what do you make of that story?
I mean, it's really sad, right? I mean, her husband is dead, and that's a terrible thing. But ISIS killed her husband, not Twitter. And the lawsuit is alleging that Twitter is materially supporting terrorism, and just because ISIS is on Twitter doesn't mean that Twitter is materially supporting terrorism. And to be clear, the government isn't claiming that Twitter is supporting terrorism. This is a civil suit, not a criminal suit. So I think it's not nice it wouldn't be kind for anyone to tell this woman that this is a good lawsuit to file. She's just suffered a tragedy, and I don't think that this is a great rabbit hole to lead her down.
Yeah. I mean, it's what we were talking about before when we were talking about stolen. I know you and I were emailing back and forth, and you didn't use it, and you just think you're not really sure what to make of it, like many people. But what Tim said was, there's a lot of people that don't really understand Twitter, and I think this is a big case of this. I mean, we just hear in the news on the the social networks are where all the terrorists are, and they're using it. We need to shut them down, and it's sad because then someone says that someone like this woman can be, like you said, led in that area. It's really unfortunate. Well, you definitely read Sarah's piece. It's long and it's well researched, as all of her pieces are at Motherboard. And Sarah's also the author of a fantastic book called The Internet of Garbage that deals with this very complicated topic of running communities and not being censorious and also protecting people and their free speech. And Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.